والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. As we continue in Surah Thalatha, 3:20 p.m., Sunday, April 14th, 2019, which is now the 8th of Sha'ban, 1440 after the Hijrah of Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam. We return back to Surah Thalatha by the great Imam al-Mujaddid rahimahullah rahmatan wasi'a wa jazahullahu anna wa anil muslimin wa anil sunnah khairul jaza' wa da'afa Allahu fi mathubatih. As we continue in Surah Thalatha, if anyone will read in their book if everyone will look in their book, and you'll find that the different types of worship that the great Imam that he wrote in his book of giving examples of all these principles that we've been covering. I would like to ask some questions which inshallah will aid us in taking that information that we learn and making it stable and firm within ourselves. For example, the different principles that we covered. ما الأصول الثلاثة التي يجب على الإنسان معرفتها وتحقيق العمل بها والدعوة إليها. For example, I asked the questions, what are the three principles that it's obligatory upon mankind to have knowledge of and to also actualize it in their actions and to call to it? The answer would be knowledge of the servant of his Lord and his religion and the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. So those are the three questions, or these are the type of questions that I want to ask before we move in the second volume of the book for what we've been covering for the past months. For now, I'm going to give some questions. For example, like I said, I'm going to repeat the question again. What are the three principles which is obligatory upon mankind to have knowledge of? وَتَحْقِيقُ الْعَمَلِ بِهَا وَالدَّعْوَةِ إِلَيْهَا, and to actualize it in his actions and to call to it. The answer would be, for example, knowledge of al-abd rabbahu, the knowledge of the servant of his Lord and his religion and his Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Then I'll ask the question, for example, man rabbuk, who is your Lord? Who is your Lord? For you would say, the answer would say, one would say, Rabbi Allah alladhi rabbani wa rabba jami' al-alamin bi ni'mah wa huwa ma'budi laysa li ma'budun siwa. For verily all these are the questions, number one, or first, we want to say that these are the questions of the grave. But also they're concerning, or they're in direct correlation to also calling to Allah. If someone was to ask these questions and they were desiring to enter the fold of Islam, for more than likely these questions will be addressed, or these questions will be asked, For example, again, and these are also incumbent upon the Muslims to have knowledge of. For example, these are the fundamentals. For one was to ask you, how would you answer? For example, if a non-Muslim came up to you, asked you, who is your Lord? Who is your Lord? One would have to give the correct answer, of course, which agrees with Kitab and Sunnah, by saying, my Lord is Allah, the one, Rabbani, wa Rabba Jami' al-Alamin bi ni'mah. He said, my Lord is Allah, meaning the one who has lordship over the creation or lordship over me. And we know the meaning of lordship is singling out Allah with his actions. And like we have mentioned in a lot of different lessons, we said that the word Allah itself indicates the category of monotheism of what we've been created for, which is called Tawheed al-Ibadah. Just the mere mentioning of Allah, Lafz al-Jalala, is an indication towards the category of unifying Allah in his worship. So one would say, my Lord is Allah alladhi rabbani. That's the answer. Who is your Lord? This is how you would reply. This is how when one reply, he would reply by saying, my Lord is Allah, the one who rabbani, the one who has cultivated me, and the one who cultivates all of the creation, meaning the one who has dominance and lordship over all creation by his different blessings and bounties. And Allah is my Lord, and I do not have any Lord other than Him. Or Allah is my, I'm sorry everyone. And Allah is my ma'bud. He's my only one that He's the only one I worship. He's the only one I worship, and I do not have a ma'bud, a deity of worship other than Him. I'll say the answer again. For example, one would say, who is your Lord? One would say, Rabbi Allah. My Lord is Allah, the one who has lordship over me. And of course, if one was to give an ask, if they was to show or express their desire, you explain, what do you mean Lord? Lord means the one who is singled out with his own actions, meaning Allah has actions that He singled out with, such as, and then you would start to say, for example, given life, given death, given provisions, to the end of it, of what everyone knows, inshallah, of what the meaning of rububiyyah is. Because if you notice these words, Rabb is all derivatives of rububiyyah. The word Rabbani, Rabbi, or Rabbani, or Rabba, Yurabbi, are all derivatives of the word Rabb. And they all come back to the root word, which is rububiyyah. So my Lord is Allah. The one who has lordship over me is Allah. My Lord is Allah. Rabbani, the one who has cultivated me, or the one who has lordship over me. And He has lordship over all of the creation. The person would say, what is lordship? Like I would say, again, a person would say, the one who is singled out with his actions, meaning the one who's able to answer you when you're in some type of dire need, or you're facing something very trivial or something very heavy is taking place in your life, and you lost everything around you, and you have no one to turn to except Allah, and He is the one that when you raise your hands and you ask Him to remove that matter that is weighed heavy upon you, that He removes it from you. That is a type of lordship, which is answering your call or answering your invocation when you're in those situations, when you feel like you have lost everyone around you. All of that is considered from the rububiyyah of Allah, as we know. So Allah is the one who has lordship over me, lordship over the creation by His different numerous blessings and bounties, by His ni'am. And He is my only deity of worship, and I do not have any deity of worship other than Him. Then I'll ask a question. What is your evidence and proof for that? What is your evidence and proof for that? How will one answer the question? Based upon an ayat which is in the book of Allah. Because everything that we know, or any principle, or any statement that we say, it has to be backed with some evidence from Kitab and Sunnah. So a person, if I was to ask the sisters right now, what is your evidence and proof for that? That Allah is your Lord, Allah is the one has lordship over me and over all of the creation. He's the one that has lordship over me and lordship over all the creation. What is your evidence for that? How would you answer that? You can, sister, you don't mind, you can read, because I'm in a whole different room. What's your evidence for that? Jade. The evidence and proof for that is by saying Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, which is the first ayah in Surah Al-Fatiha. And we said, and what we've been covering, everything that's other than Allah is considered a'alam, not a'alim, a'alam, with a fatha on top of the lam, a'alam. Alim is a scholar. Alam is a sign or something from the creation. So everything other than Allah is the alam, and I am one of the alam. I'm one of the creation. طيب. Now we ask a question. For example, how do you know your Lord? By what? What sign? How do you know your Lord? With what? How will one answer the question? Jayyid. I know my Lord by his signs, his ayat, and his makhluqat. From his ayat, his signs, and his makhluqat, and his creation. And from his signs, of course, is the night, the day, the sun, the moon, the seven heavens, the seven earths, and what is in them and what is between them. So this is how one will answer these questions, by his signs and his makhluqat, and his creation, the night, the day, and what is in the night of the day of the sun and the moon. What is in the night and the day of the sun and the moon, and the seven heavens and the seven earths, and what is in them and what is between them. طيب, what is your evidence and proof for that? One will either mention the ayah which is in your book, Surah Fussilat, ayat number 37, or Surah Al-A'raf, ayat number 54. Well, Allah says, we'll just suffice by one evidence. One evidence is sufficient. We say one evidence from Surah Fussilat, ayat number 37. For example, and from his signs is the night and the day, and the sun and the moon. Do not prostrate to the sun, nor to the moon, rather prostrate to Allah, the one who created them, if you truly, indeed, worship him alone. Like we mentioned in the previous class, or in the past class, we mentioned Allah in so many ayat in his book refers back to these signs. How many times, I'm sure sisters have heard the Quran being recited, you'll find that Allah says, هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. You've heard that a lot, repeated. You'll find that that's repetitious in a lot of verses in the Quran. I'm sure when everyone is reciting, or when one is in the back hearing a reciter reciting the Quran and the salawat, you'll find that constantly being said. You'll find that the ayat, Allah says, هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا ثُمَّ اسْتَوَى عَلَى الْعَرْشِ هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. You hear that constantly. Like we talked about the reasons of why Allah Ta'ala singles these signs out and repeatedly mentions them in a lot of his verses, is like we said, they are the greatest of his signs. And they are his signs that they move and they change constantly on a daily basis. And also, we talked about in the last class that the reason of why Allah singles these signs out from his creation is because everyone sees them from the creation, all over the dunya. There's no one except that they know about the day and the night, and the sun and the moon. And if a person now was to be asked, I don't know about a night and a day and the sun and the moon, I think that some people would think that he's living in a whole different dimension or somewhere else. But the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or one of the reasons why Allah singles out these signs, is because all of the creation acknowledges them. They acknowledge them. They know it exists. They know there's a day. They know there's a night. They know there's a sun. They know there's a moon. And for that reason, Allah utilizes these type of signs in order to show his existence and establish upon the creation the hujjaj, the arguments and the proofs that Allah Ta'ala is the one that deserves to be worshipped. And he says it clearly, and from the night and the day, and the sun and the moon is from his ayat, is from his signs. Do not prostrate to the sun, even though that's a great sign. It's a great sign. One would think that it is something special about it, so it deserves to be worshipped. As there are certain people out there that still, to this day, worship the sun. And do not prostrate to the moon. Rather, prostrate to the one, meaning singling him out in worship by prostrating to him, the one who created him, if you truly indeed worship him alone. طيب. Another question. What is ma huwa ar-Rabb? Who is ar-Rabb? Who is the Lord? One would say, this will be his answer, or her answer, Ar-Rabb huwa as-Sayyid al-Malik al-Mujid min al-Adam ila al-Wujud wa huwa al-Mustahiq lil-Ibadah. Who is Ar-Rabb? Ar-Rabb is huwa as-Sayyid al-Malik al-Mujid min al-Adam ila al-Wujud wa huwa al-Mustahiq lil-Ibadah. That who is Ar-Rabb? Ar-Rabb, he is a Sayyid. A Sayyid, meaning the dominant one, the master. The one who's a master, the dominant one. He is a Sayyid, he is Al-Malik, he's the owner. And he is the Mujid. He is the one that brings one into existence. Or if you want to say he's the one that brings one, or the originator, from non-existence to existence. The Mujid, the one who brought or makes things come into existence. Because the word wujud means exist or existence. Or now if you want to say Mujid is the one who brings something into existence. Mujid. He is a Mujid, the one who brings things from non-existence into existence. And if that's the case, he is the one that deserves to be worshipped alone. So I'll say it again. What is the question for Rabb? Rabb is a Sayyid, the master, the Malik, the owner, Al-Mujid, the one that brings things from non-existence into existence. And he is the one that deserves to be worshipped. That is Ar-Rabb. If one was to be asked the question, who is Ar-Rabb? They want to answer like this. Ar-Rabb huwa as-Sayyid al-Malik al-Mujid min al-Adam ila al-Wujud wa huwa al-Mustahiq lil-Ibadah. Ar-Rabb is the Sayyid, the master, the owner, the Mujid, the one who brings things from non-existence into existence. He is the one that deserves to be worshipped. So if you was to be asked this question, this is how you will answer. Along with the other evidences and proofs that we have mentioned. One will ask, for example, prove to me that Allah exists. I've gave the sisters answers in this regard before. How one can easily teach one the existence of Allah wa ta'ala. Because there's too many signs. Too many. There's too many signs of the showing and establishing the proof of Allah's existence. There's too many. So if a person was to ask, what is your evidence and proof, of course, for the existence of Allah? As the Muslims who are educated, this would be an easy answer, or this would be an easy question to answer. Because there's too many signs. And one can easily say, look at yourself. Someone gave you eyes to see, a nose to smell, a brain to think, ears so you can hear, so the human being can hear, a tongue to taste, lips so you can speak, to communicate and convey what you need and what you do not need, legs so you can go from one place to another. It's too many signs. That's a no-brainer to know that one or a body that was made in such a manner was designed. It was a design. Just as right now, if I was to say to you that this car fell out the sky, no one designed it, you would look at me like I'm crazy. If I was to say to you that this bus driving down the street, nobody designed it, you would look at me like I'm crazy. If you could believe that this car that's made out of metal was designed by a person putting wheels here and a window there and a steering wheel there and an engine there and doors so one can enter it and doors so they can leave out and say no one designed that, you would look at me like I'm crazy. The human being is even more bewildering of his creation as far as, the human being is even more amazing of how it was created. There's eyes here, there's a nose there so it can smell, there's a tongue so it can taste, lips so it can speak, speech, languages, legs so it can move, so legs and arms so it can pick up and it can now take care of its daily necessities, a brain so it can think, numbers so to know how to think and how to what, and how to use its brain to think so it can now go out and take care of its daily necessities. All these different things you find in the human being, it was a design. It's clear for anyone who can rid themselves of arrogance and haughtiness and glorifying their intellect, thinking they are smart, but in actuality, they're leaving off what is the most easiest thing that is right in front of their nose or right in front of their faces. That the human being, if you look at it in itself, it was designed. There was a designer, there was an architect. For anyone, it's a no-brainer. Then, on top of that, after Allah gave us all these different types of blessings and these bounties, such as sight and hearing and speaking and walking and touching and feeling and smelling, then Allah made, after He created man, He gave it its partner. I'm going to now give it a female, so it cannot be alone. So the human being cannot be alone. I'm going to make from it or create from it a mate. And I'm going to design her in a certain way so they can procreate. Design her in a certain way so they can now continue their existence in this world by procreation, by reproduction. That was design. It's clear. Anyone who does not have any arrogance with them knows that this is a no-brainer. It's too many signs in the creation that affirms the existence of Allah Ta'ala. It's too many signs, too many. For that reason we say, if that's the case that we have affirmed of Allah's Ta'ala's existence, then we know that He is Ar-Rabb. Meaning, who is Ar-Rabb? That He is a Sayyid. Al-Malik al-Mujid min al-Adam al-Wujud wa huwa al-Mustahiq lil-Ibadah, as we said. طيب, next question. What is your dalil for that? Meaning, what's your evidence in proof that Allah is Ar-Rabb? What is your proof and evidence for that? The proof and evidence for that, everyone, is in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayat number 21 and 22. Matter of fact, we covered this. We took this last week. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His book, O mankind, worship your Rabb. Worship your Rabb, the one who created you and created those before you in order to attain taqwa. But we said that the meaning of taqwa, as Ibn Abbas here says, it means ibadah. That you may find, as it says in Surah Al-Baqarah, O mankind, worship your Lord, the one which created you and those before you. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, perhaps you will have taqwa, meaning perhaps, maybe, inshallah, if Allah gives you tawfiq, you will worship Him. So that's the meaning of the word taqwa here in this context. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the one who created the earth as a firash, as a place for you to go about, to walk upon it, to carry out your daily affairs, for you to walk around, to walk upon, for you to travel upon, for you to carry out your daily matters, and the one who raised the heavens with a structure that's lofty and high, and He sent down from from the heavens, meaning the clouds, that sustenance of rain. And he brought forth by it that vegetation and agriculture as provisions for yourselves. So as we talked about on many occasions, brothers and sisters, that Allah in so many ayats mentions rububiyyah and uluhiyyah together. Rububiyyah is mentioned to establish upon the creation and to bring about the evidence and proof that He is the one that deserves to be worshipped. That, as we know, rububiyyah is mentioned in the book of Allah, min bab iqamat al-hujja al-khalq. That is mentioned in the Quran in order to establish the proof and evidence against the creation that He is the one that deserves to be worshipped. And we have too many examples of this in the Quran. It's too many. You can take your pick. And the sisters, I gave everyone the keys and the fundamentals. If you open the book of Allah, you'll constantly find that Allah mentions rububiyyah and uluhiyyah in so many ayats. So that's the evidence and proof of that. The next question. What is the definition of ibadah? What is ibadah? Sisters, you don't have to keep your voice low. I can't hear you if you do. I can't hear. Jayyid. Mumtaz. That worship, number one, based upon what we mentioned last class, is the correct answer which she mentioned. But first I wanted to mention something that takes precedence before that, but they all included the same definition. But her definition was 100% correct. Al-ibadah, we say, number one, is the most utmost of khudu', with the most utmost of what? Hub. Most utmost of dhul. Firstly, we say that ibadah is established upon ghayatul hub ma'a ghayatul dhul. The most utmost of love, the most utmost of servitude. That is the two foundations of ibadah. And ibadah revolves around those two pillars, which is the most utmost of love, the most utmost of servitude. That every affair of worship is built upon those two foundations. There's nothing we do of ibadah except that those two foundations have to what? Be actualized. Those two foundations have to be actualized. غاية الخضوع وغاية التذلل والحب. Most utmost of love, the most utmost of servitude. There's no way that you can worship Allah based upon just saying and claiming you love Him, and that's it, without displaying some type of service or servitude, meaning what you implement in your actions. As we know, a lot of people out there make claims, but do their actions substantiate their claim? There's a lot of people out there that make claims. They make claims with their tongues and with their speech and what they say, verbally. Verbally, they make claims. But there has to be something that confirms and substantiates your claim, which is what you do of service, of servitude, and in actions, and in practice. There's people out there that say that they love Allah. There's a lot of people out there that claim that they love Allah or they love God. But does it manifest in their actions? It's something totally different. There's no confirmation. And the confirmation is in the actions. So one has to worship Allah with making the claim along with putting forth the effort of the what? Of the khidmah, of the service, of the servitude. Which is either in the belief system, meaning the actions of the heart, and in the actions of the limbs. As we'll talk about, inshallah. So ibadah, the definition of the ibadah is this. Number one, if you want to summarize it by saying the most utmost of love, most utmost of love, or the most utmost of what? Servitude. And then the one will add on to the definition what the sister mentioned, what she said, which is غاية الحب والتعلق لمن فعل له ذلك And if you want to say, in other words, what the sister said, that is a comprehensive word for everything that Allah loves and what He's pleased with of actions, outwardly and inwardly, meaning of the heart. طيب. Another question. What are the various types of worship that Allah has commanded us to carry out? And this is how you will answer it. You would say they are plenty. They are Islam and Iman and Ihsan and Dua and Khawf, Ar-Rajaaq, Wal-Tawakkul, Wal-Raghba, Wal-Rahba, Wal-Khushu' Wal-Khashya, Wal-Ibana, Wal-Inaba, Wal-Isti'ana, Wal-Istighatha, Wal-Isti'adha, Wal-Dhabh, Wal-Nadhr, وغير ذلك من العبادات. He says, what are the various, or the kinds? What are the kinds of worship that Allah has commanded us to carry out? One would say they're plenty, or they're plentiful. There is Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. I think everyone already knows this. And Dua. And one would say Khawf, fear, fear of Allah's punishment, fear of Allah's wrath, and Raja, hope of Allah's mercy, and hope for Allah's reward, and Tawakkul, reliance, Raghba, one having the desire of what Allah has prepared of reward and mercy, and Rahba. And Rahba, likewise, is the opposite. To have all that fear and khushu' and also humility and khashya. And we said khashya is fear coupled with knowledge. Wal inaba, repentance, isti'ana, meaning that isti'ana means seeking help, but that type of help is the seeking aid, or that seeking help, that type of isti'ana, which is seeking help of worship, not necessarily of what's pertaining to the creation. The isti'ana of seeking help from Allah, meaning of worship. Then you have isti'adha, which is seeking refuge. With istighatha, which is seeking help at the time when you are, as they say, makroob, when you're in a time of severe anguishment. Meaning you have no one else around you to turn to. And you make that type of supplication, as we talked about Kitab al-Tawheed, that istighatha is a type of supplication. As we explained that in Kitab al-Tawheed. The istighatha is a type of dua. It's a type of supplication. It's a specific type of supplication. Meaning, when you're down and you feel that you do not have anyone to turn to except your Lord. You are in a state of anguishment. And if you want to say you're down on your last, where you feel like your life wants to end, and you don't have anyone to turn to, no one can remove you from the endeavor or the situation that you're in, except Allah, you raise your hand and you're in this type of state, that's called istighatha. That's istighatha. It's the supplication of the one who's in a state of anguishment. So these are the various types of worship that if you was to be asked these questions, this is how you would answer. From the different types of worship, for example, is Islam, Iman, Ihsan, Dua, Khawf, Raja, Tawakkul, Raghba, Rahba, Khushu', Khashya, Inaba, Isti'ana, Istighatha, to the end of it. Also, for example, Dhabh, sacrificing. Nadhr, taking an oath, and other than that. From the different types of worship that Allah has commanded, all of it, that be specified or specifically made only for Him, exclusively. Tabarak wa ta'ala. Exclusively made for Him, subhanahu jalla fil ula. طيب. Based upon what we've been covering in Usul al-Thalatha, what is your evidence and proof for that? what is your evidence and proof of that? That all of these different types of worship are only for Allah. You can use one evidence as it comes in the book of Allah in Surah Al-Isra, ayat number 23. And your Lord has proclaimed that you do not worship except Him alone. Your Lord has proclaimed that you do not worship except Him alone. And just the mere mentioning of the word ibadah is comprehensive for all of these different types of worship we mentioned. Or you can use the ayat which is in Surah Al-Jinn, which is ayat number what? 18. That the masajid belong to Allah, and so do not invoke along with Allah anyone or anything in the least. And as we know, dua breaks down into two categories. You have dua al-ibadah and dua al-mas'ala. You have the supplication that is worship itself, and you have the supplication or the invocation of asking Allah. When you raise your hands to Allah Ta'ala, asking Him for your request. طيب ما حكم من صرف منها شيئا لغير الله. طيب, I want to ask the question. After all this we just mentioned, if one was to take any aspect of worship and give it to other than Allah, what is the ruling for that person? You can raise your voice. I can't hear. Then that person is a mushrik, kafir. He is an unbeliever. He's a polytheist. And if he dies in that state, he will be in the hellfire and dwell in there forever. May Allah Ta'ala keep us and you from that. He says, so the question is, what is the ruling regarding one who takes one of these aspects of worship, one of the types of worship that we mentioned, and he gives it for other than Allah, then that person is a mushrik, kafir. He's a polytheist, he's a disbeliever, and if he dies in that state, he will dwell in the hellfire forever. He will never come out. طيب. What is your evidence and proof of that? Just one evidence. One evidence and proof of that, it's too many, it's a lot. I'm sure brothers and sisters have heard in the salat, recited so many times, وَمَن يُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ فَكَأَنَّمَا خَرَّ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ فَتَخْطَفُهُ الطَّيْرُ. We can use that other one. Or for example, Allah Ta'ala says in His book, وَمَن يَدْعُ مَعَ اللَّهِ إِلَهًا آخَرَ لَا بُرْهَانَ لَهُ بِهِ فَإِنَّمَا حِسَابُهُ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِ إِنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الْكَافِرُونَ. Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala says, whoever invokes along with Allah, meaning worship Allah, along with Allah, another deity, he has no evidence and proof of that. Meaning no authentic, correct evidence and proof. For verily his reckoning will be with his Lord. Verily the unbelievers or the disbelievers will never prosper. Meaning if they have some type of prosperity in this world, then in the hereafter, inevitably, they will not prosper. طيب. So that's one evidence along with the other ayat in the book of Allah that is considered a proof and evidence for this question. طيب. What is the evidence and proof that dua, the supplication, is worship? What is the evidence and proof, or what's the proof that supplication is worship? What's the evidence that supplication is worship? As it comes in Surah Ghafir, the one who forgives, ayat number 60. And your Lord has said, call on me, I will answer you. Verily those who are arrogant of my worship, they will enter hell in humiliation. They will enter hell in disgrace. So that's a dalil to show that dua, supplication, is ibadah. It is worship. Allah has described supplication in this verse as ibadah. Notice how Allah says in this verse, He says, and your Lord says, invoke me, ud'uni. meaning perform dua. I will answer you. Verily those who are arrogant of my worship. So notice Allah called dua ibadah. So dua is considered ibadah. We know that the authentic narration upon the Prophet ﷺ is a dua huwa al-ibadah. Supplication, it is worship. It is worship. طيب. Now this is the last part this is the last part that I mentioned to the sisters, that we didn't cover these, but I said to return to Kitab al-Tawheed to know the evidence and proofs for all these different types of worship. For example, what's your evidence that fear is ibadah? What is your evidence that raja is ibadah? What is your evidence that reliance is ibadah? To the end of it. Or isti'adah. A lot of these we covered in Kitab al-Tawheed. So I asked the sisters kindly to revert or to return to Kitab al-Tawheed. Return back to the book, listen to the lessons, and all of the answers to these questions are there. For example, what is the evidence for fear? Khawf. What's your proof and evidence for raja? Some of these we didn't cover as far as tawakkul. But as far as khawf, isti'ana, istighatha, isti'ada, those are there. Dhabh, nadhr, sacrificing, an oath, istighatha, refuge, also isti'ana. All of those are in Kitab al-Tawheed. In which, inshallah, if we do not, right now for the month of Ramadan, about to start, very soon, Kitab al-Tawheed will cover all those different questions, and we'll answer them, inshallah. طيب. If the sisters will read their book, you'll find that it says al-asl thani, that the second principle, and I'll read it and we'll stop, is ma'rifatu din al-Islam bil adillah, knowledge of Islam with evidence and proof. Knowledge of Islam with evidence and proof. You notice that there says, what is Islam? It is submitting oneself to Allah with tawheed. وَالْقِيَادُ لَهُ بِالطَّاعَةِ, and one submitting himself to Him by obeying Him. And one setting himself free from polytheism and its people. And there are 3 levels. The first level is Islam, which is, we know that Islam meaning submittance. And Iman, which means belief. And Ihsan, as we know, is perfection. And every level has its arkan, it has its pillars. And he says that the pillars of Islam are 5. Which is the testimony that none has the right to be worshipped except Allah, and that Muhammad is the message of Allah. And to establish the prayer, and to give the zakat, to give the money to the impoverished, and the fast the month of Ramadan, and to make pilgrimage to the house of Allah, al-Haram, meaning the sacred house of Allah. As we know, the evidence for the testimony that none has the right to be worshipped except Allah is in Surah Al-Imran, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the verse in Surah Al-Imran, that Allah testifies that none has the right to be worshipped except Him, and the angels and those who possess knowledge. قَائِمًا بِالْقِسْطِ, Allah establishing, of course, we know justice and equality, or qist, justice, not equality, but justice. None has the right to be worshipped except Him, and He is Aziz, and He is Hakim, He is all powerful, and He is all wise. وَمَعْنَاهَا لَا مَعْبُودَ بِحَقٍّ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَحْدَهُ. And this is what we'll discuss next class, inshallah. This, which is the second principle. The second principle, which is the knowledge of the religion of Islam with evidence and proof. Notice that, inshallah, next week we'll discuss the second principle after the author, if you notice in his book, may Allah reward him, when he established the first principle, which is what we just covered for the past hour, approximately, we just said this and we explained it for an hour. The first principle, and after we explained it, we gave details in it, you'll find that the author now starts to mention the second principle, which is the fundamentals of the religion. وَلَا يَنْبَنِي إِلَّا عَلَيْهَا, that you'll find that nothing of the religion is established except upon these principles. Except upon these principles, the first one and the second one. This is the second one we're going to cover, inshallah. The second one is knowledge of the religion of Islam with evidence and proofs from the Book of Allah and the Sunnah and the Message of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And notice that he starts to speak about the meaning of the word ad-deen. The meaning of the word ad-deen. Or rather, he starts with Islam. Hold up. No. He says the religion or knowledge of the deen of Islam. I'll explain the meaning of the word deen, and then we'll stop, inshallah. There's a lot of people think that the word deen just means religion, as deen is a little bit more comprehensive than that. But usually when people hear the word deen, they say religion. But you'll find that deen, in so many ayat, deen can mean what you will be repaid. What you'll be repaid. Whether it be good, or whether it be bad, or whether it be a reward, or whether it be a punishment. Deen also can mean, as we'll discuss inshallah, it can mean manners. It can mean etiquette. It can mean manners and etiquette and how you treat someone. A lot of people say, yeah, it is. Yes. We'll talk about it inshallah. I'll give an example. It's going to come inshallah. That the word deen can also mean how you treat someone. Manners, etiquette. For example, the word deen. Matter of fact, let me just cover this quickly. So we've got a lot of time. I have to start the next class. The word deen وَهُوَ الطَّاعَةِ, as we know, deen can mean obedience, repayment, what you do habitually, and it also can mean khuluq. Khuluq. With the great Imam Ibn Faris, that he mentioned in his book called Mu'jam Maqayis al-Lugha, Ibn Faris, and that's a Salafi dictionary by Ibn Faris, rahimahullah. And yes, we do. We have a Salafi dictionary. A lot of people don't know that. The religion of the Salafiyya is covered everything. Nothing that Allah, except He gave a scholar to service every aspect of the religion, even in the aspect of Lugha. It's called Maqayis, Mu'jam Maqayis al-Lugha Ibn Faris. But at any rate, he mentioned and said that the meaning of deen is obedience. It also means repayment. It also means ada. Ada means what you do habitually, daily, of course. And he says it also means khuluq, etiquette, mannerism, how you treat people. طيب, listen to what he goes on to say, Ibn Faris. He said, فَالْخُلُقْ يُفَسَّرُ بِالدِّينِ يُفَسَّرُ بِالدِّينِ وَكَذَلِكَ الدِّينِ يُفَسَّرُ بِالْخُلُقِ كما قال ابن عباس رضي الله عنه. And he even brings an ayah in the book of Allah. وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ أي لَعَلَى دِينٍ عَظِيمٍ. This is what Ibn Faris, he goes on to say. And this is even Ibn Kathir. Excuse me, everyone. This is Ibn Kathir. Ibn Kathir mentions, he says, khuluq, etiquette, is usually explained by the word deen. He says, and likewise the word deen can also be interpreted as khuluq, etiquette, and how you treat people. Allahu Akbar. He said, just as Ibn Abbas says in the ayah, which is in Surah Al-Qalam, ayah number 4, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. Verily you are upon a tremendous khuluq. Notice Ibn Abbas gave the tafsir, he says, you are upon a tremendous deen. So a lot of people and a lot of the Muslims out there, and this is to show that what? The importance of etiquette and manners, to the point where it's even called deen. That part of the religion, the greatest part of it, is how you speak to people, how you treat them, how you have manners with them, and how you display exemplary character and treatment with people. Allahu Akbar. It's called deen. So I don't like people out there that say, oh, you know, good manners and those neat narrations about good manners and good treatment. Yeah. No. It shows that's part of the deen. It is the deen. To the point where khuluq is even called deen. And deen is even called khuluq. Listen to this part as it goes on to say. He said, وَحَالَاتْ كَلِمَةِ الدِّينِ بِحَسَبِ اشْتِقَاقِهَا وَتَعْدِيَتِهَا. طيب. As the word deen in the Arabic language, of course, we know that the verb from the word deen, and deen is masdar, it's the verbal noun. The verbal noun is deen. Then you have a verb from it, which is dana. Dana yadinu. Dainan or dinan. That if the word dana yadinu, which is the verb, if it's mentioned without a preposition, meaning if the verb was just mentioned by itself in the context, that it means hisab wal jaza. It means accountability and it means repayment. Accountability and repayment. So this is good da'wah to non-Muslims. A person would say, what's the meaning of the word deen? Deen, the origin of deen means, like we said, what you'll be repaid. Because we believe that everything we do in this world, there's going to be a repayment. There's going to be accountability. There's going to be a recompense. So the word deen or dana, yadinu, means recompense, and it also means what? It means accountability. What's the proof of that? The proof of that is in the book of Allah, which we recite every day, Maliki Yawmiddin, the owner of the day of recompense, the day of accountability, the day of jaza, the day of repayment. The word deen also means, we already, alhamdulillah, I got to get the evidence for that too. As we said, the word deen means repayment. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah An-Nur, for example, ayat number 25, He says, وَيَوْمَئِذٍ يُوَفِّهُمُ اللَّهُ دِينَهُمُ الْحَقِّ. On that day, Allah will fully repay them their deen of truth, meaning their repayment of truth. Their repayment of truth. So deen here, deenahum al-haq, means jaza'ahum al-haq. Their repayment upon their actions, or based upon their actions in this world. Deen in the Arabic language can also mean qahr. Qahara, qahr. It can mean qahr. It can mean domination. Deen in the Arabic language can also mean domination. To subdue or to dominate. If you said in the Arabic language, qahartuhu fadhal, like I dominated him and he became subservient. So that means to show that the word deen also, if you want to say dani yadinu, this definition, meaning domination, is from al-a'la ila al-adna, from the one who's at the top to the one who's being dominated over. Of course. So that's another meaning of the word dana yadinu, or deen. Then you have the meaning of the word deen, where the harful lam, or the preposition lam, follows it. For example, you say dana lahu, or dana lahu. Dana lahu. For the word dana or dinan lahu means to obey him, or obey one, or be humble to one. To obey one, and to be subservient to one. I think that's clear. And the word deen or dana with the preposition ba, meaning dana bihi. So now we're not saying dana lahu, saying dana bihi. You put the preposition ba in front of the verb dana, meaning ittakhadahu deenan wa adatan wa khuluqa. If you add the preposition ba, it now means to take something as a deen, of course, meaning what people roughly translate as religion, or what you habitually do, or as etiquette and morals and character. And if you want to say, and as far as in Kitab and Sunnah, that deen is a ta'a ad-da'imatu al-lazima allati qad sarat 'adatan wa khuluqa. But you'll find that Ibn al-Athir, that he mentions in his book called An-Nihaya fi Gharib al-Hadith, that he said the word deen is, he said it's constant ta'a. Is a ta'at ad-da'imatu al-lazima. It is constant, continuous obedience to the point it becomes habitual and it becomes from your character. He says, "As deen huwa ta'atu da'imatu lazima allati qad sarat 'adatan wa khuluqan." Is that constant, continuous obedience until the point it becomes something habitual, meaning your ada, meaning your habit, becomes habitual, and it becomes from your character, and it becomes from your morals. And we'll stop here, inshallah. Any questions about the lesson? What's the question? Did they say yes? I think they say yes. What's just a little bit louder, sister? I couldn't hear. Which ayat again? Oh, the proof of the word khuluq, you mean? Jayyid. As far as it's in Surah Al-Qalam, ayat number 4. The ayat of Al-Qalam. Where Allah says, "Very you are upon a tremendous khuluq." Ibn Abbas mentions, it says, "You are upon a tremendous deen." You are upon a tremendous deen. So the word khuluq was given a tafsir of it, or what was interpreted by Ibn Abbas as it being deen. So deen can mean khuluq, it can mean character, and character can mean deen. Any other questions? There isn't any questions? Jay, we'll stop here. I'm going to start the next class directly, right now. There's no break for today. They just kept my book. Oh, yeah, to use the bathroom? هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك وأشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.